Sarah and doesn't direct his comments toward her, it's just the rest of us. However, he treats her well and is a good partner to her, which is his one redeeming quality. My dad and Kay hate him the most and will do anything to avoid him at family gatherings. Kay usually just ignores him and brushes off his comments, as she doesn't like conflict. There have been a few occasions where she's responded, but it's usually in a joking manner, which my dad finds amusing. My mom is a peacekeeper and will do anything to avoid drama, so she just changes the subject whenever Steve starts. However, she and my grandparents hate him just as much as the rest of us. Sarah is the only one who doesn't. Our son's birth mother, Tess, was Kay's best friend. Tragically, she passed away in 2021. Tess had an undiagnosed heart condition and went to sleep one night, never waking up. Jack had been left alone in his cot all day, screaming for his mom, before Kay got worried that Tess wasn't answering her texts. Kay went to their house to check on her, found Jack in his cot, and discovered Tess in her bed. We adopted Jack because no one in Tess's family was in a position to take him. We raise him as our own, but he knows who Tess is. This is a very sensitive topic for Kay, as it was deeply traumatic for her and Jack. Now, onto what happened last weekend. Saturday was the anniversary of Tess's death, so Kay, Jack, and I visited her grave. Kay is always quiet after these visits, and this time of year is especially hard for her. On Sunday, we had a family gathering at my parents' house, something we do every couple of months to catch up. At first, everything was normal. Kay and my dad were off to the side talking, which is typical. I could see Kay was struggling, so my dad suggested they go for a walk to clear her head. They've done this before, so it wasn't unusual. However, Steve took issue with it and asked why they left and why he wasn't invited. I explained about Tess and that Kay just needed a moment. This wasn't good enough for Steve, who said she should have gotten over it by now. At this, my granddad, normally a quiet man, said his best friend had died over 20 years ago, and he still has days when he misses him so much it hurts. You don't just get over something like that, he said. Steve shut up after that. Kay and my dad came back, and she was in a much better mood. We all sat down for a late lunch and started chatting. Everything was fine until Steve tried to butt into Kay's conversation with my granddad. When it became obvious they weren't going to include him, Steve loudly declared, "This is crap. She's getting all the attention because her friend died 3 years ago. Get over it already. We're all sick of hearing about it." The whole table went silent. I looked at Kay and knew she was about to go off on Steve. But it didn't happen the way I thought it would. Instead of exploding, she very calmly said that she and my granddad weren't talking about Tess, they were making plans to take him to the Christmas markets. She added, "But if you want to be a jerk, no problem." Then she unloaded. She told him everyone in the family hated him because he's a toxic, narcissistic idiot. She said that whenever he doesn't come to family gatherings, everyone is happier. She told him there's a reason he has no friends and even his own family can't stand him, it's because he's rotten inside. Finally, she said Tess may have only lived 32 years, but she made a bigger impact on people than Steve ever would, even if he lived to 150. She said Tess's funeral was packed because she was so loved, whereas Steve would be lucky if anyone but Sarah showed up to his. After that, she went to the backyard, and I followed her. A few minutes later, my dad came out and said he told Sarah and Steve to leave. We went back inside, and Kay apologized to everyone, saying she should have kept her mouth shut. Everyone except my mom told her she was right and that it was about time someone told Steve off. My dad even joked it was funny that a lesbian had been the one to tell him straight, which lightened the mood. We spent the rest of the afternoon there before picking Jack up from Kay's mom's house, where he had stayed overnight. Yesterday, I got a call from Sarah saying she and Steve wanted an apology from Kay or they wouldn't come to Christmas. I reminded her that we wouldn't be at Christmas either since it's our year to spend it with Kay's mom, so it didn't matter to us. She got upset, saying Kay was out of line and needed to apologize. I told her no way and that I agreed with everything Kay said. Everyone else at the gathering did too. Sarah hung up. Later, my dad called and asked if Kay's mom would mind hosting a few more people for Christmas because he and my granddad didn't want to spend it with Steve. After Sarah called me, she had also called my mom, who argued with my dad about demanding an apology from Kay. My dad refused, saying he was done with Steve even if it affected his relationship with Sarah. My granddad agreed. I texted Kay's mom, who said they were welcome, which made my mom furious. She's now saying my dad and Kay are ripping the family apart. This has turned into a mess. Kay said she'd apologize if I wanted her to, just to keep the peace, but I told her absolutely not. Everything she said was true. I don't know how to move forward, and everyone in my life hates Steve so much that even if Kay had physically attacked him, they'd still say she was in the right. Internet strangers, please help. How can we get to a place where we can be around each other amicably? I just don't see a way right now. Comments from Up. Commenter, for things to be peaceful, both parties need to want it. Kay did nothing wrong. I would never spend another moment with Steve. I would let Sarah know I love her and will see her anytime, anywhere, but I'll never see Steve again. If you have one guest that basically wants to ruin the holiday table, there is no path forward with them. OP, if it was just Sarah upset, I wouldn't care, but it's my mom. She tries so hard to keep the whole family together, and she's devastated by what's going on. If it wasn't for her, Sarah could go take a running jump for all I care right now. On Sarah. This is the issue. Steve and Sarah don't see anything wrong with what he's done. It was just him being honest. I'd be happier for Kay to apologize if Steve and Sarah admitted what he said was wrong too. Without that, I'm being stubborn about it. My dad told Kay he would fall out with her if she apologized since she did nothing wrong. There was no screaming or shouting. She said everything very calmly. I feel stuck between making my mom happy and doing what I believe is right. To another commenter, my sister doesn't see anything wrong with what Steve says since he's just being honest, but she loses it when someone is honest back. I don't understand her anymore. On Mom. Take the high road and rise above it have been two of my mom's favorite things to say to us over the years. I just feel like enough is enough. He crossed a line this time that he can't come back from. I especially don't want my son around him when he's saying things like that about Tess. To another commenter, if I hear my mom say take the high road one more time, I'm going to scream. I'm sick of the high road. I've been on it for 8 years. I'm happy to be on the low road now. Later that day. OP, well, I've just found out that my granny and grandpa, my mom's parents, are going to my uncle's for Christmas, and Steve isn't invited. So it looks like it'll just be my mom, Sarah, and Steve for Christmas this year. How Up feels about that? Vindicated. My mom is like her parents, they're all peacekeepers, and for them to finally have had enough shows that Steve didn't just step over the line, he ran right past it. On Mom. Kay's mom has already told her that if she changes her mind, she's welcome at her house. Even if it's Christmas morning, she's more than welcome. Obviously, Steve and Sarah aren't invited at all, but it's good that my mom has the option at least. Later reflection. I've realized Steve has been trying to target Kay and my dad's relationship since they're very close. They've traveled all over the country visiting classic car shows together, which Steve has tried to join. But he doesn't know anything about cars, so there's no point in him going, even if they liked him. I actually think he's been trying to push Kay and me out of the family so he can have my dad to himself, even though my dad can't stand him. Update, 8 days later. Hi, I know how much this community loves an update, so I thought I would give you one as things seem to be sorting themselves out, kind of. After I wrote my last post, a few things happened within the next couple of hours. First, I spoke to my grandparents on my mom's side. They were there when everything happened, but they're like my mom, always trying to keep the peace. That's where she gets it from. They were supposed to spend Christmas with my mom this year, but they've changed their minds and decided to spend it with my uncle instead. They've decided not to be around Steve anymore because he causes too much drama. They asked if they could come see us and Jack on the 23rd before heading to my uncle's, which I happily agreed to. This really surprised me and outright shocked my mom. As I said, they're the biggest take the high road people I've ever met, but even they've had enough. The next thing that happened was my dad calling to tell me that Steve and Sarah now want Kay to make a public apology in front of the entire family. They also want her to admit she was lying and that the family loves Steve. My dad was laughing as he told me this, calling them delusional. So, any small chance of even a superficial apology went right out the window. The third thing that happened was Jack coming home from after-school club with a recorder, an instrument that I am seriously tempted to shove up the teacher's backside. So, all in all, it wasn't a great day. Through talking to people on here, I also realized that Steve has been trying to push Kay and me out of the family. He's been organizing trips he knows we wouldn't be able to attend, not that we go anyway, since a weekend away with him sounds worse than a paper cut to the eyeball. He's also constantly trying to get my dad away from Kay whenever we're all together. I think he's jealous of Kay and my dad's relationship, as they're very close and go on trips to classic car shows several times a year together, usually with my granddad as well. Things went quiet for a few days until the weekend. Our town has a big Christmas fair that runs from November through December, and we always go with my mom, dad, granddad, and Kay's mom. We decided to cheer my mom up by going on Sunday and then going out for dinner afterward. My mom was told that if Sarah or Steve showed up, we would all leave. She promised they wouldn't be there. Things were a bit awkward at first but settled down after a while. At one point, Jack got my mom and dad to take him on the giant snow slide. When my mom walked back over to us, she had tears in her eyes. I pulled her aside to see what was going on, and she said that while waiting in line, Jack told her he was happy Uncle Steve wasn't there. When my mom asked why, he said, "Uncle Steve is a bad man." My mom tried to tell him he wasn't, but in typical stubborn 4-year-old fashion, he argued back. He said he learned at school that people who say mean things all the time are bad people, and since Uncle Steve says mean things all the time, he must be a bad man. Jack also said he didn't like him. There had been a case of bullying in Jack's class a few weeks ago, and the teacher had done a lesson on how wrong bullying is. I think that's where this came from. This finally broke through to my mom. If even a 4-year-old can see what a horrible person Steve is, she realized she needed to as well. She told me she felt stuck because she hated Steve and agreed with everything Kay had said, but she loves Sarah and doesn't want to isolate her. I told her I'd always be there for her, but I wasn't putting myself, Jack, or Kay through being around Steve again. I told her she needed to think about what she wants, not what I want, or my dad, or Kay, or Jack, or her parents, or Sarah, or Steve. Just what she wants. She went quiet and then mentioned that Kay's mom had told her she was welcome at her house for Christmas if she wanted. She also said she could decide on Christmas Day, and Kay's mom would save her a plate. We rejoined the group, and a little while later, I saw my mom and Kay's mom having a deep conversation while walking behind us. Neither of them will say what they talked about, but my mom seemed happier afterward. They've also been talking since then. Yesterday, my mom told me she'll be coming to Kay's mom's for Christmas, and they've even been planning to go shopping together next week. When my mom told Sarah about her decision after calling me, Sarah predictably lost her mind and accused her of choosing us over her. My mom told her she was choosing to have a good Christmas, free from being belittled and made miserable for the sake of Steve and his so-called honesty. Sarah then called me and asked if I was happy that I'd won. She then did the unforgivable. She used a few homophobic slurs toward Kay and me and called Jack the bastard of a whore. I immediately ended the call, blocked her everywhere, and let my family know what had happened. I also made it clear that I never wanted to speak to her again. Everyone was as appalled as I was. My granny, my mom's mom, called Sarah and apparently told her she was dead to her because she wouldn't tolerate a bigot in the family. Sarah has been trying to reach out to apologize, knowing she crossed an unforgivable line, but I've just kept blocking the fake accounts she's making on Instagram. Steve also tried to reach out to my dad. When my dad eventually answered, Steve tried to excuse Sarah's behavior by saying she was just angry and didn't mean it. According to my mom, my dad gave him a verbal lashing and told him he was the worst thing that had ever happened to Sarah and our family. My dad has since told Sarah he's disgusted with her but will be there for her if she leaves Steve. Until then, he wished her good luck. My mom has gone low contact but wants to keep the door open so Sarah isn't completely isolated. Some people have suggested that Steve might be abusive towards Sarah, but I really don't think that's the case. Steve usually acts like a jerk when the attention isn't on him. He knows that saying cruel things puts the spotlight back on him, and he revels in it. After Sarah's outburst, I've come to believe they're both toxic and feed off each other's toxicity. She lets him get away with his behavior because she enjoys watching us bite our tongues and keep quiet. So now, my mom's angry, my dad's angry, all 3 grandparents are angry, and the extended family is angry. Kay has been my rock through all of this, but I can tell she's furious about what Sarah said about Jack. As for me, I'm just sad and done with it all. At least now I know what Sarah truly thinks about Jack, Kay, and me. I guess that's something. It's not the perfect update, but we move forward. It'll be nice this Christmas to have both sides of the family together for the first time without worrying about Steve being a jerk. Still, I'm deeply saddened that this is how my relationship with my sister has ended. I'm trying to get into the Christmas spirit, but it's been tough. The only things making me smile are Kay and Jack being their goofy, silly selves to cheer me up, though the recorder can absolutely go to hell. I curse whoever invented that thing. Seriously, screw you. Thank you all for the support on my original post and for opening my eyes to a few things. Maybe internet strangers really are the way to go for advice. I hope you all have a good Christmas and holiday season. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I don't think the dickish brother-in-law and Sarah saga has concluded. I'm glad you'll have a peaceful Christmas in theory, but I just think the pair of them aren't convinced yet that they're shut out. OP, it wouldn't surprise me if they try to show up at my parents' for Christmas, but we won't be there, so they won't get far. As long as they stay away from me, Kay, and Jack, I don't care what they do. Commenter 2. May small children playing recorders with more enthusiasm than skill follow Steve everywhere. OP, this just made me laugh a little too hard. Thanks for that.